everyone, in today's video I'll be showing you how I completed this spread, which is the 9th piece of my animal habitat art series, Farm Animals. Now, like I said, this is the 9th piece. There are 10 pieces in the series. The last one is going to be pets or your domestic animals, but for this one it's farm animals. Now, just to give an idea of what this series is all about, basically I wanted to represent as many animals as possible in a range of spreads. So I didn't actually know initially how I wanted to go about doing this, because in total there are 153 animals in the entire series. So I was kind of thinking, how do I put them onto paper and have them as individual spreads, because I wasn't going to do them all in one go. So I decided to use the animals' habitats that they live in. So a lot of research went into me planning and preparing to do this art series. I had to research the different animals living in the different habitats. Then I had to select animals and then look for royalty-free reference photos. Once that was done, then I could actually start doing the drawing or the illustrations of these animals. So once I had the photos and everything, I started doing sketches of each animal habitat. Some have got double spreads, like for example, the ocean animals, the savanna animals, they are 2-page spreads. This is an A4 size sketchbook that I'm using. And some of them, like for example, this one, farm animals, are single-page spreads. So once I had all the reference photos, I placed them over or all across the paper using or sketching them in using a water-soluble graphite pencil. Once I had all the sketches in and placed wherever I needed them to be, then I went ahead and started using the Derwent Inktense pencils to ink all the drawings. Now, I do start off with the inking with different colors, paying a close attention to the reference photo, looking at the shadows, the highlights. Like I mentioned in previous videos, I don't want this to be a hyper-realistic drawings of all the animals, and neither am I trying to get the size in proportion to each other. I just wanted to represent all of them on a spread and have as many of them on a page or represented for that habitat, and have them all look like the actual animal that they are meant to represent. So once I started working with the ink onto the animal, I basically lay in layers of color, paying a close attention to the reference photo, looking at the fur type, the texture of the fur, if it's fur, feathers, if it's feathers, scales. Look at that, look at the body structure, look at the muscle structure, look at the skeletal structure, look at the shadows, the highlights, and apply the color accordingly. Then I use a liner brush or a small round brush, depending on the area I need to cover with water or activate with water. And then I just use a paper towel to dab off excess water, and I activate the ink on the drawing. I let that completely dry before I come through with another layer, because some of the drawings I had to come through with multiple layers to build up that texture or of their fur, or to build up the layers of the shadows and highlights. Especially with feathers, they overlap one another, so you need to come back and refine some of those details of the feathers. As I said, these are not hyper-realistic drawings, but I want them to look realistic, and they still got a lot of detail, and they're very small, so they take a lot of time. So I let it dry. If you had used Inktense pencils and you want to speed up the drying time, then you can use a hairdryer just to dry it, but use it on a lower heat. And also just keep it a distance away from your paper. You don't want to burn the paper or damage the paper in any way with applying too much of heat. So it just helps to speed up the drying time. I haven't really used the hairdryer much in these spreads. I just let it air dry, and I worked on a different section, and then I came back to that section once it was dry, and I went over that area. So you can work section by section. That way you don't have to you can just wait. By the time you get onto because I'm not using a lot of water, so I don't have to wait for it to completely, or wait for a long time for it to dry. It takes a quick amount of time to dry because I'm not applying a lot of water. I'm just using enough water to activate the ink. So, and I'm moving from section to section. So while the one section is drying, I move on to the tail, for example, here, and then I'll move back and forth as I need to, depending on what I am or what animal I'm drawing. So by working from one section to another section, you can allow that area to dry while you work on another area, and then return to that area once it's dried and layer in more pencil, and then activate it with water again and repeat the process. Let it dry and then continue that way if that needs to be done. But as you can see, when you do the initial sketch or the initial inking, it doesn't really look like much. It's very light, and you don't need a lot of pencil applied to your paper because you are going to blend it out with water, and by activating it or blending it out with water, you're going to see it's going to get much more saturated and darker. So you won't need to apply that much pencil. So start off light with a light hand and apply light layers of color before going darker, because with ink it's easy to go darker but it's difficult to lighten up an area. It is possible, you can do it, but it's easier if you start light and work your way darker. So start off with the lighter areas, the lighter colors, and then build your shadows slowly and then go to a darker color. Like as you can see with the pigeon, I started off with the lighter areas, and keep cleaning your brush also between colors, because if you got residue from the darker areas, you can spread it to the lighter areas when you are applying your brush to the actual drawing. So even though some places you may see me working in a darker area first, or maybe the eyes, or maybe the shadows, and then I go to the lighter area, I am cleaning off my brush, rinsing it out and dabbing it on a paper towel before I return to the lighter areas. Like you can see now, as I'm drawing the cow, I'm starting with the darkest color in. This is still going to be darkened a bit more certain areas, but I'm applying the darkest areas, and then I'm working on the shadow areas. And also obviously I have to look at for a cow, I have to look at the print on the fur and basically get that shape more or less down. And then I use the water, as you can see with the brush, I'm just activating that ink, and I am going to come through on the face area. You can see it's looking a bit washed out and light, so I am going to darken that with another layer once it's dry. You can see I moved over to the body, working on the body, and then by the time I get to the head again, it will be dry. So you don't have to use a hairdryer or wait that long. You can just work on different areas. So you can see there I darkened the area, and then I went through with the water again. Now I'm just using a white jelly roll just to add those brightest highlights to the eye and just give the face a bit of definition, as well as the ear. Now with the donkey, what actually happened is I actually forgot to record the initial drawing of the donkey, but also a little thing which is important, why you need to do the initial, or why I needed in this case to do the entire spread of all the sketches before I started working on them or inking them. I actually forgot about the donkey. He was not included in the spread initially. Then I had to erase the rest of the animals and redraw them and space them out accordingly to fit him into the spread. So it's very important that you do this, if you're doing something like this, to sketch out the entire spread first with a water-soluble graphite pencil and keeping a light hand, and then once you're satisfied with this, start inking. Had I started inking, I would have basically been halfway through the piece, and then I would have realized I forgot an animal, and I would have not been able to include him, because I also didn't want to make the animals really small to try to fit him in. I wanted them to be a decent size that more or less is relative to each other. So just bear that in mind if you try something out like this. Do the entire sketch of all the animals or whatever subject you're painting or drawing. Do the entire spread out, sketch it out, and then start inking where it's going to be permanent. So that just to avoid, if you need to change something, you got time to change it. So you can see I'm doing the sheep now. And another tip to remember, white is not always white. Try to include some of the areas of the surrounding areas colors into the fur as well, just to give it more dimension and make it look more realistic. The only pure white will be the brightest highlights of any drawing that you do. So I guess that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to like and share. feel free to comment below and don't forget to subscribe. Till the next one, bye!